Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the second chapter of the book, Jesus in Our Days. As we come here to look at the table of contents, and I'm going to make it bigger so you can see, we are number 2 out of 20 chapters. And it's important for us before we keep going in our discussion to be reminded that the psychological series by Joanna de Angelis, the spiritual author, in collaboration with Divaldo Franco, is just powerful and impactful. So, during this series of discussions that we're together, we will review insightful messages that are contained in this book. Jesus in Our Days is another small book. I look at it and I have here in my desk, and this chapter specifically is what, 3 or 4 of a very small, so it's really easy to read. And I say this because many of us are oh challenged or discouraged when we see large books. This is tiny, right? And the fun thing about it is, while it's tiny, it is packed with content. So it engages us, engages our mind, engages our ability to just really break down, dissect, if you will, each of those chapters. But anyways, with this, as we come back together, we will just zoom in each chapter, which has an overarching topic. And as you can see here, it ranges from love, tolerance, courage, insecurity, suffering, ingratitude, etc., but how they all correlate to a different perspective about who we know as Jesus Christ, right? And it brings this Jesus that is so current. It's, as we can see in the title of the book, Jesus in Our Days. So he's here with us, present with our context, our current problems, our current situation. So as we dive deeper into these teachings, we're taken by how they're so contemporary. And in fact, we understand they amaze even the most skeptical scholars in terms of the depth of the content in Jesus' teachings. So back to Joanna. Joanna presents this, what she calls the uncrucified Jesus. And it's important because if we always think of Jesus, then I'm stretching my arms out, right? On in the cross, victim, failing in his last hours of existence. It's very different image than the image of Jesus uncrucified, as a loving Jesus, as a Jesus that does not need to demonstrate his suffering to touch us, even though he, in those topics, will be addressing quite challenging situations that we are all faced with. So here's my invitation to continue to look for answers to our lives in Jesus' therapeutical teachings, and together let's find peace, let's find health, and ultimately let's find our own sense of happiness. Throughout the next lives that we come together, we go over these chapters as we can see in the screen. And let's go ahead and get started with today's chapter, which is all about God's love. So I wrote here, and I'm going to read just to make it easier if you cannot read as we're looking to this in your smart device, right, your smartphone and other portable devices. But I chose from the very first part of this chapter a notion of God's love, right? And in here, Joanna says it was not only in his Jesus dialogue with Nicodemus. So Nicodemus like, what do I need to do, right? And so it was not only in his dialogue with Nicodemus that Jesus' statement about the need to be born again. So this is the topic of today's discussion: reincarnation. So it was not only in that statement that we discussed the need to be born again and all the implications. Jesus' statement was repeated in many forms, in many other occasions, and it has confirmed the process of successive bodily experience as a merciful gift of God's love on behalf of all of our spirits. So as we go through and spend a few moments talking about it, we come to term with the idea in this chapter as a whole that that reflects Jesus and reincarnation. And Joanna poses to us the question that, or the statement that, without the concept of reincarnation, nothing really makes sense. So if it doesn't make sense, let's go ahead and spend a few minutes talking about what is reincarnation. Well, simply put, as Spiritism and Joanna tells us, it's just a method. If you think about it, it's a method for a spirit. And who's the spirit? You, me, everyone, right? We're all immortal spirits that this body is temporarily housing. So it's a method for a spirit to learn, to act, to choose, to have the freedom to choose on how to live, how to recover if and when making mistakes. And as we recover from those mistakes, right, it's our choice that we want to get up and try again. We have the choice to uh, pay or repair, if you will, if doing those, the act of making mistakes, we have caused pain or caused any damage through that. So if we think about the inevitability of it, right, reincarnation then start to work as part of what we call life's automatism. What are we talking about? Well, it's just the law of life, law of nature. Reincarnation is simply that. We cannot choose to say, no, because I don't believe it, I'm not going to reincarnate. Just like if I were not to believe in gravity, it would not mean that I can just throw, yes, Isaac Newton, apple up and we'll just keep going up. Through the love of gravity, that apple would fall again, just like through the law of reincarnation. Upon the end of this corporeal existence, will come back at another reincarnation and love another chance. So it's very interesting because if we think about again the inevitability of it all, right? It is the propelling mechanism that will allow us and push us to grow and to evolve. And we're talking about, of course, spiritual evolution. So, as a result of reincarnation, sorry, our growth, our progress too is inevitable. They go hand in hand. I can choose to not learn. I'm going to just stay put for an entire incarnation. I'm going to do very little, and yet we're still learning. It's almost somebody mentioned this to me. It's a simple, silly example, but right, we do intake of calories to survive, and we then like, oh, I ate too much. Let's do exercise and burn. But just by simply being, by breathing, we are already burning calories. So it's the same thing. We may not be exercising, we may not actively doing things that will lead to our growth, and even then we're growing. So hope this example helps. But as we come through this idea, right? These mechanisms for our progress, our learnings, are expressed through all the steps that we take, right? So think in terms, I'm in, let's pretend, incarnation one of 10,000. And that first one, there's a little bit of learning, but as I keep growing, I keep going on step by step by step, and we make our mistakes. We have the freedom to choose however we go about doing the next step. And in doing that, oh, yes, I cause mistakes. I misunderstand someone, or I am misunderstood, and oh, all of those conflicts that arise due to our still immature spirit. But as we learn step by step until the very final step when we are free, we don't need to learn anymore. We are actually in a state of ultimate peace, ultimate love, ultimate compassion, and yes, no more conflicts. We are living a fulfilled and happy life. It's important though that we can think in terms of the one of the goals of reincarnation is exactly that, the ability to being able to feel and be pure love. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. Our love still is limited to our own sense of expressions. For instance, I love my child unconditionally, right? But I am unable to love my neighbor's child the same way. And just because we are not able to love unconditionally everybody, it just means that we are still limited by the constraints of our own sense of a self-centered, selfish uh, uh, way of defining our roles and our responsibility. But more to that in a few minutes. So we talk about this idea that we will one day will be pure love, and that step by step by step journey really means that we are all of us, propelled by our need to grow spiritually through our inner transformation, because we all need to meet and be integrated, if you will, with our inner God, the sacred within. So, back to the book. If Jesus had not been a reincarnationist, I don't know if there's such a word, but someone who is believe and puts in all his teaching that central idea of reincarnation, yeah, his entire message would have been fragmented or even devoid of the support that we need to find, the consoling aspect that we need to find in his message, because it would mean there is no justice in its highest expression, right? So if you think in terms of a justice and divine justice, justice of mankind, my justice is very much based on the material transgressions, right? But divine justice looks at holistically all of the components of this soup, where all the ingredients are there and they are impacting each other. So justice, divine justice, leads or addresses a someone, and that someone may be me, right? A transgressor of whatever, with the opportunity, the gift of giving tools and chances and events that will lead to my re-education. So those are the gifts that we receive, this education opportunity. And with education then comes, yes, another step toward that final destination, which includes total, absolute freedom. So, if we think about the love that Jesus taught us, had indeed not been anchored by the notion of the blessings of a bodily rebirth, right? So I will die and there will have a rebirth with a different body, but it'll be a bodily rebirth, a corporeal existence. And without it, it would not give rise to that, would not allow us to understand that we have an opportunity, a new beginning, right? Opportunity to address that was too difficult for us, for example, to do well, and to repair or go through a process of reparation, if you will, on the things that we have done not so well. And all of it, if you put all of the sum of it all, would mean that um, we would had a an ephemeral, transitory, a a vulnerable nature, and that justice would not be applicable, because as we see, we feel, as we can see from our material lens only, this great systems of social, economical castes, if you will, where some are more endowed than others. So there's a sense, if you don't look from the lens of reincarnation, that a few are selected or elected and more fortunate, in detriment of those that are not so lucky or fortunate, or they're not so endowed with intelligence, with health, with a loving family, with a life that is not punctuated by tragedies or violence or other types of difficulties. So you can see our existence is just a fragment of this entire whole. And when we look at the entire whole, and we talk about not just me, but the entire universe that I called the soup earlier, then we start to make sense how it all comes together. So it is important that we also note that the the introduction of the concept reincarnation has also made its way into the field of psychology. And when it did, and we talk about, very recent in terms of the history of humanity. Psychology is rather recent development, but when in its development, when reincarnation was introduced into the field of psychology, it opened up many different possibilities, many different dimensions, and it kind of opened the door for those who are psychotherapists, who are in this field of study of the human psyche, to understand, just the unconscious, individual or collective unconscious that was not truly understood before, the notion of archetypes, and all the notions included in depth psychology, which is the study of the field that unveils the complexities that each and every one of us bring with us in, and it's just a reflection of a longer past than your a number of years lived on earth. So back to Jesus. Jesus, as we mentioned here, were supported by the idea of a physical rebirth. He could immediately tell which in a person needed and was able, right, to recoup their health if they were in a moment of um, illness. They were able at that point that Jesus could look at them, they could recoup their health just by taking into consideration the reasons of their own pain and suffering. Consequently, he was able to heal or not, right? He could see those that were able to access Jesus' help or those who were not. So the fact here, and I love this, Jesus knew that it was actually the spirit that was ill, not the body. He always addressed the individuality and not the personality with which we were clothed back then and now. So when we talk about individuality, we are referring here to the sum of all that we have been able to accomplish throughout our many reincarnations. So, as an example, my personality is, it contains my name and my life, right? Marcia Trajano. My persona is the role that I am playing in any given moment. So, for example, I have the daughter persona, the wife persona, the mother persona, the friend, the professional, or even the one here in front of you speaking to you. And finally, my individuality is my spirit itself. So it is the spirit of what currently is the personality Marcia Trajano with all the multiple dimensions, the needs, the desires, so that my spirit can fulfill the need to have an integral, fulfilled, and happy life. So back to Jesus, we because we need to think of him as he looked at us when he walked on earth. We think 2023 years ago, more or less, right? He could look at us, or he could look into each person as he was walking on earth and see the individuality. So, since he was understood that in each person's individuality, right? So, let's pretend I'm talking about now Marcia, I'm with Jesus, and he could look at me and he says, "Oh my goodness, there are, I don't know, 5,000 steps toward all that I need to accomplish. I'm step number two," right? So implicit in that, there's the notion of a childlike spirit, right? Very immature and at the same time very vulnerable, very frail to the external influences of at the time my current existence. So Jesus, just by being close to us, he gave that he was the source of that moral fortitude, and he was able to heal with my pain, but he was always through the law of cause and effect, right? He did not undo or change the law of cause and effect. So what is law, cause, and effect? Well, otherwise known as karma in Eastern philosophies, it's just a law that reflects a notion that it's beautiful, that we are the architects of our own happiness. So, depending on our behaviors, our choices in any given existence, we are also responsible for the impact of those choices. So, as a consequence, back to Jesus, back to his dialogue. It was not only in his dialogue with Nicodemus that he talked about we need to be born again, but that was implied in everything he did. And it's confirmed that process of many successive bodily experience. So in light of this, and we think in terms of many spirits at the time, had many other incarnations, we had many rebirths. We think that um, when he was talking at the time to his disciples, and he talked about Elijah, right? The prophet Elijah. Oh, he's already come, and it's funny because it was not something like, oh, really? What are you talking about? No, it was understood that we would come back, and we could see this. Well, we have a few more minutes. Let's go ahead and keep going. And I just want to bring here the sense that the message that Jesus brought to us was truly unforgettable. And it was despite the fact that when he came and how he came to us may not have been perhaps the best or most hospitable environment, but he was a spirit, right? In that long journey, he was already there, and as a pure spirit, and the good news is that, yeah, we all going to get there one day. He was healthy and he brought a sense of peace. His presence, because of it, was so impactful. And they had it had such magnetism that it stayed with all of those that were touched by him. So I just keep thinking that of all the times that we too are perhaps touched by a strong message or by someone that impart their knowledge to us, and it becomes the diverging point for us to change directions. I don't know. For example, for me, I today I clearly remember when Raul Teixeira, who is a famous Brazilian medium, writer, lecturer, philanthropist, when I was living in Atlanta, he came to see us, and um, he said something 25 years ago, and you know what? His words still resonate with me. It's just funny because I still remember the setting. I remember so clear that as if it was in a movie that we just keep on watching over and over again to the point that we can always repeat the lines, right? So with Jesus is the same. The memory of those that came upon him was so strong that stayed with them not only in that lifetime but throughout many incarnations to come. And we were told by Joanna that they come back. Those spirits that were touched by Jesus come back, and they come with this mission as missionaries, as prophets, to bring back, to use him as a guide, as a role model, and model those behaviors taught by Jesus. How about that? It is so amazing. As we're about to close, I just wanted to bring to the idea that Joanna repeatedly in all her books, but this is in the psychological series, right? This one, Jesus in Our Days, is her first book, and we're just beginning this journey with Joanna. But she keeps calling him the psychotherapist, and Jesus, as we said, does not. Um, his teachings do not make sense without the concept of reincarnation. But as he he takes on the role of the therapist to our pains, we have to go back to remember that his psychotherapy, sorry, was based on the notion of life after life, and the notion that we are the architects of our own destiny, and that we're given this enormous gift of our choice, our freedom, our free will. And with that, we have the freedom to choose how we want to live. How do you want to address within those choices in a manner that we live toward that final destination, but also linked, if you will, to our past deeds. So, in a simplistic way, Jesus is looking at each one of us, and we're giving this gift of life, and we, we spend, expand, we grow according to our heart's content. So, with that, we come to the end of our 30 minutes. I invite all of us to read the book, and perhaps next time we meet, you're going to study with me the third chapter. And I just wanted to say that. Like Joanna wraps up the chapter, right? Your reincarnation is this beautiful, lofty gift. We should not waste it, right? And each moment that we live is priceless, and it's a moment that is so, we can make it impactful and dense in our effort to sublimate ourselves, to detach ourselves, to become able to feel and be pure love, a pure loving creature. And so she says, well, it's up to you. If you want to shorten the number of rebirths, just go ahead and do what you need to do, and not have to be born again, right? Because as Jesus said, in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, which extends from your conscious toward the infinite, you must be born again. How about that? Well, thank you so much for your time, and I hope to talk to you again. Goodbye.